Hello, Leon.
Mendel,
Hiya, how are you guys?
can't complain. We've been running around. I used to work at the airport fixing aeroplanes many, many years ago. And I went to a reunion with a lot of the retirees.
Right.
We came back a little bit late, so we're now getting ready for Chabad.
Beautiful, beautiful. Good. Well, you came to perfect timing, perfect timing. I've got what I think is quite an interesting class.
Good.
But yeah, as you may have noticed, I didn't publicize it early enough. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through the whole story of our existence, of what not just as a human being, but we'll talk about us pre-human days and post-human days. Now, if you were sorry, I'm just gonna pause for 1 second. Sorry, there's a bit of noise outside.
No worries. Okay. Yochanan, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, no, it's good to be here. Yeah, I should be coming down to Melbourne in the next couple of weeks, so
Oh, lovely.
hopefully get to a service.
Wonderful.
It'll be good to see you. Hopefully this time you don't get stuck for 4 months unless you want to move.
Let's hope.
I think it was more than 4 months, actually.
Yeah, it was 5 months, but it has a positive side to it. Everything has a positive side.
Yeah. All right. So let's begin. So it's a fascinating discussion. So as I was saying, I should really start from here. If we were to be non-believers, so to speak, you would say, oh, your whole of existence. So maybe where we were before you were born or where you came from, perhaps you want to talk about evolution, how humans got here. I'm going to focus today on your story. According to Judaism, what's the story of the individual? What's your individual story? And it really breaks down, and I could do this whole class really in 2 minutes, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to start with my whiteboard again, and hopefully I'll get it a bit better than last week, my whiteboard. So you can see my board. This is what we're going to do. We're going to make 4 boxes. This is what I do in school when I teach in school. I put a little board over there. Now, these 4 boxes are the 4 stages of your life. They're the 4 stages of your existence as an individual, as a person. Now, there's different ways of how we can go about it, of course, but I'm going to be very general tonight. We talk about it in the most generic terms possible. Sorry, I'm looking for something to make it a bit easier for me to write. Okay. So, okay. So, what's this? I'm going to start off actually with number 2. This is where I'm going to start. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why am I starting off with number 2? Because this is Earth. Okay. This is the time that you spend that you're on Earth. And in this time, you get to have 2 parts to you. You have a body and you have a soul. Now, I would like if anybody wants to unmute themselves and try to figure out what's the rest of the world of the pattern. Now, this is Sudoku. I've given you 1 block. Your job now is to fill in the rest of the boxes. So let me be a little bit easier to figure out what I was talking about. Number 2. Number 2 is your time on Earth. So it's very straightforward. It's not a trick question. It's all very simple, this task. What would number 1 be?
Could it be your spirit?
Okay, but what time in your history was it?
In the beginning.
Okay, so we're going to call it, so Earth, I'm just writing Earth because I don't have that much space.
Right.
Earth means your time on Earth, you have a body and a soul. Then we have your first stage is before birth.
Before birth.
Okay, before birth. What stage number 3 then?
Before birth. Body, soul.
After death.
Okay, so we're going to call that the after, and I'm just going to apologize for the neatness. After life.
Afterlife. Yeah.
Now, what stage 4?
The rebirth, being born again in a new body, possibly. What do you think, Irene?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have 3 stages so far. We have good evening, Joe. We have before birth. We have your time that you are on Earth after birth, or your time like which hopefully you are right now if you're on this course. As in, if I could see you, or if I know that you're there, there's probably somebody there could be people that are listening in, but they're not in this physical world, but we're not going to talk about them. But who knows who's coming to our classes these days, right? But what stage 4? So we have before birth, your time on the world, afterlife, and stage number 4.
Can I just,
As a spirit,
Okay.
heaven.
Retirement.
Retirement.
Retired.
Okay. Yochanan.
I was just going to continue that just your soul that goes up to heaven.
Okay. So we're going to call this period. So Leon wanted to say your rebirth, or possibly he was thinking of something called reincarnation. However, I'm going to say that we are actually talking about over here. Reincarnation would fall over here. Okay. I don't have enough space. Reincarnation. Okay. Sorry.
Reincarnation. Yeah.
But that's actually part of your afterlife, if we believed in it. Okay. So number 4 would actually be, oops.
Or born again.
You are following some strange religions, Leon, tonight. Sorry, I'm not able to move the screen, so let me just.
That's all right. Well, reborn. Yeah. I don't know.
How do you spell resurrection?
Resurrection.
Resurrected. Resurrect.
R-A.
Okay,
Yeah.
don't look at my spelling. My spelling, I could write it in Hebrew without any problems, but when I start writing in English, especially without a proper board, it becomes funny. Anyway,
Well, none of us know how to spell it because we never use the word.
okay. I'll just pretend that I should. We'll write it in Hebrew and then I'll definitely be correct. Chiat Hametim. I'm not bad at my Hebrew writing, but my English writing. Anyway, let's not talk about it now. English spelling, I loved English writing, but not English spelling as a kid. So anyway, okay, resurrection. I think there's a second S over there or a second R. I think that's the only thing there was. Either second S or second R. I can't remember. Okay, so we have 4 stages of our existence. Now, I'm going to go a moment over here. And I want to say, if we wanted to be fun, we could always look at the stages of our existence. We could have, baby / child, teen, adult, or we could have the 5th is retirement, or whatever it is. So of course, that's with our life. So we're going to say, what I'm trying to show you is, of course, when we're talking about our lives, there's so many stages that we go through. But I want to focus on this big picture. Oh, what happened to it? It's gone. There you go. Where we look at the world as our entire lifespan is 4 stages, and hopefully it's a little bit neater than that, but it's probably a lot more messy than it actually looks on the board. That it would actually be quite neat if you were to look at it. But the truth is, I've just told you this whole shear in 1 minute. It took me a bit more than 1 minute, but all you got is the whole of your lifespan over there. You start off before you're born, then you're born into a body, then you have an afterlife, and then you get resurrection. Now let's look at one more important point before I get into the details. And I wrote in number 2 that you have a body and a soul in number 2. When is that? That is when you're on earth. What do you have in stage number 1? Just the soul.
Just the soul, number 1.
What do you have? I'm going to take this out for now because I don't have enough space. What do you have in stage number 3?
Soul.
Good. Soul.
Irene said soul.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the soul.
Yes, soul.
Oh,
That's
okay.
correct. Oh, I don't know what happened.
It's not allowed. It's not printing, whatever it is.
I lost the pen.
Hey,
So
hey.
you lost the pen.
Oh. Sorry, when you try to get, well, that's scary. Okay. So then we have only soul. Okay. Now what happens in stage number 4?
Well, resurrection.
Soul as well.
Okay, so we have soul. Well, what's the difference?
Ready to be born.
All right, are you watching? Really, it should be like this.
Yeah, body.
Soul goes into body, exits body, re-goes into body.
Ah,
So it's just a cool way of looking at your existence. This is who you are. This is the story of what it means to be a Jew, to be a person. So we have 4 stages, and I'm going to try to make it a bit cleaner. Simply so that we don't have to look so messy, and you could more easily understand what I'm saying. You basically have soul, body, soul, body. Now, the only difference is that I missed out 2 points. There's also a soul over here, and there's also a soul over here. Okay, so what do you see? There's always a soul. There's always a soul. Does this soul change? No, it's the same soul. It's the same you. So your soul that you had before you were born, yeah, it goes through changes, but it's the same person. So who's the person? It's the soul. It's always the soul. So you are always a soul. You never change. But for periods of your time, you will enter into a body. Now we're going to take a moment to look at some of these details. And last week I wanted to discuss what it is, which part and what's the important part and what's the purpose of this whole exercise is for us to see that all people are going to be going through a cycle. Nobody has reached this cycle, this part yet. This is that part that nobody has reached yet. We're going to all reach that at some point. According to Judaism, that's the resurrection. The resurrection of the dead is going to happen when Moshiach comes, or a second stage of the coming of Moshiach. But for now, the people that are living on this earth are over here. The people that have not yet been born are over here. And the people that have passed away are over here. What's the shortest place that most people spend? The shortest amount of time that most people spend, or sorry, that all people spend, almost all people spend the shortest amount of time here. That's the shortest amount of time that you're going to spend.
Where?
When you're born and in your body. Is that what you're saying?
Your lifetime now is
Yeah.
the shortest.
Right,
Sure.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. So if that's the shortest, the question is, why do you have to do it? If you're just a soul, when you were a soul, you were perfectly holy and pure and good. Why do you have to do this? Now, in order to ask the question, I'm going to first ask you another question. And the question is, out of all these 4 stages, which stage is the most important stage of your life? Which is the most important stage of your life?
I would have thought when you're in the soul's in your body.
Very good. You are correct. You would have learned a bit of Hasidus to know that. This is your important. So the most important, I'll just write over there. Now, why would I say it's the most important? Each stage is important, but this is the most significant part. This is the part that really makes the changes. This is where you're able to make the changes, to change things in the world, to have an impact on the world. This is the part that you fulfill the bigger picture. The rest of the part, you don't really make changes. You're not a big changer. You're not a big doer. So there's one other slide I want to show you for a moment. Well, I'm probably going to come up with more slides, but I'm trying to keep them all somewhere. And that is, oh, wrong one. Oh, that was the joking one. Sorry. Okay. So this slide, what I'm going to show you over here. So what I've showed you is your life. Now let's look at another slide. This is going to be what we call all of history. Are you ready? This is each of these things. I'm like basically giving you a short history of everything in one night. So hopefully a lot of the stuff you know. But anyway, if I were to make a line over here, okay, this would be year 1 or 0. This would be year 7,000. Okay. Historically, we have 7,000 years of history of the world's existence, and beyond that is a different type of era. It's not a physical as we know it, or even the 7th millennium itself. But what we have is basically 6 millenniums. And we have a different mission in each millennium, in each period of time, in each generation. And our job is a continuous job. Now, the job that I'm talking about is the 7,000 years or the 6,000 years of physical life. And as long as the physical world is going on, there's all the spiritual worlds going on. There's the people that are pre-life, the people that are post-life that are existing too. But they're not the shakers and makers anymore. They have lived their life, or they're going to live their life, and they're going to have their time to make a difference. The only time that we have to make a difference is the time that we were here, the 60, 70, 80, 90, 120, 200 years, whatever, 120 years, please God, whatever it is. The only amount of time, the only ability we have to make change, to make a difference into the bigger picture is in those 120 years. And that time will affect all of history. Everyone will be affected by that. Okay, so we make that change. Could we do things after we pass away? Yes, but not exactly the same way. The real impact, the real difference is in these 6,000 years. Sorry, is in the time that we're in the world. Now, when the first person over here did something, let's say Adam, that continued. We were all a continuation, and then the person that was born over here Now, this is important. We're all just a continuation, right? And then we have 2000. All these people are continuing the long line of history, and the program, the mission is continuous. And each of us have an opportunity to do a piece of that puzzle. And when do we do the piece of the puzzle? Is in no time that we are on this world. If I could find the slide that is on the world, because it's not letting me see. Over here, body and soul. That's the time when we're going to make that difference. That's when our contribution is going to be felt. So, hopefully I could. So, we have this slide. What is this slide talking about? This is talking about the history of the physical world. This is the reason for everything. The reason why God creates a pre-world and a post-world is all for this world. It's all here for this. This is, for now, the ultimate. What does it mean, the ultimate? This is the end game. This is all going towards end game. Every mitzvah that we do, every good deed, every time we help somebody, it all gets compiled into a ultimate purpose and mission as part of the big game. You know why we say Kaddish, by the way? Why do we say Kaddish when a person passes away?
I give up.
Well, there's lots of reasons why we say Kaddish.
Help the soul up.
Okay, so that's one basic reason, is that we're doing it to help the soul. But on a deeper level, is we now acknowledge that that person has fulfilled his part in his contribution to the world, hopefully. The person has lived his part and given his little piece to the 6,000 years of existence. And now we're hoping, by us saying Kaddish, we're saying Yitgadal v'Yitkadash Shmei Rabbah, may the name make great and make holy the name of Hashem. May the name of Hashem become great and holy. What we're saying is that Hashem's existence should be exalted and made bigger, because what we're ultimately trying to achieve in this world, for that person has come to a conclusion. But what am I accepting? That I am the continuation of that person. That person's own individual mission may have ended, but he will continue through me. And while I accept that he had, and his time is over, but now I will continue. His life will continue through me, through the next generation. That's the Yisgadal, may his name be great. It's all about making God's name great. It's all about this ultimate purpose. That ends when the person passes away. Okay, so I'm going to, so everyone was able to see all my drawings, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I want to pause for a moment and ask if anybody has any questions on anything that I just said. Because I said a lot of stuff, even though it was pretty short.
Do you want to say anything?
No, I sort of.
Want
Any questions? If anybody has a question, unmute yourself. Okay, otherwise I'm going to go on.
I was going to ask you a question. So if you've got a brother and your brother's passed away, he has his own soul. Do you then continue his
No,
whatever he had or
no.
did or contribute to him in any way?
So let me explain something to you. I hear what your question is. And the answer is that we as a family, as a Jewish people as a whole, we're all considered one family.
Right.
Yeah, we're all considered one big family, but there's our immediate family, and then there's our broader family of Jewish people. And then there's our larger family, which is all of mankind.
Mm.
So within our immediate family, we have a soul connection and a physical connection to those people. And therefore, when things happen to those people, they have direct impacts on us. So we have the ability to live through them, or they have the ability to live through us. So we have the ability to enhance or to give from them. However, your soul and your existence is a separate entity from each. Each person has their own separate existence, but we're able to give them back. So one of the reasons Noach said, why do we say Kaddish? It's to help the soul. And the answer is correct. But how are we helping the soul? We're helping the soul because we have the ability, we're in the ultimate. We're in the physical world, which is the ultimate, the end game. We're in the main place, right? We're in the real hot seat. We're on the stage where things happen. They have passed on and they no longer have the ability to make changes. But if we do something on their behalf, or with them in mind, or as a result of something that they taught me, or in their merit, we end up doing, it ends up benefiting them. Why? Because they cause something to happen in this world. They directly or indirectly cause something to happen. It's as a result of them that the person's saying Kaddish. So that's what I was trying to say earlier. When a person says Kaddish for a person who's passed away, they're saying that although that person's passed away is no longer able to make the changes in the bigger plan, but because their child, and they taught me and they did something for me, I am now continuing that initial. I'm continuing for them. They can't do it, but I could do it. And when I do it, I'm acknowledging that it's for their merit, or it's because of them that this is being done. So therefore, they're not directly making change; they're indirectly making change through you. So, in answer to your question, Leon, are you a continuation, or you can continue and have impact, but that person wasn't his own impact person.
Thank you.
Which is going to lead you to possibly another question, which was when I drew this, I showed you that in number 3, some people mention the next life as being reincarnation, or some people want to call it, I don't know, rebirth. We don't really believe in rebirth as the way other people believe in it, but reincarnation. Now, reincarnation is not understood. We don't understand reincarnation the same way that perhaps other people would. Apologies. The way other people understand reincarnation is they understand that you have a soul that enters one body. And this is not really a discussion of reincarnation, but because I understand, enters one body, leaves, then just a soul, then goes into another body, right? That's the way most people understand reincarnation. So it's a soul, then leaves the body and re-enters another body. That's not really the way we understand reincarnation in Judaism. Now, that can happen, but that's the exception. That's not the rule. That's not the way it generally happens. The way it normally happens in Judaism is as follows. There's a soul. Now, I just have to write the word soul because you cannot draw a soul, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
So we have the soul, and then it goes into a body. And here, when it's in its body, it will fulfill his mission. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole of reincarnation. Maybe we will one of these days. But then it will become a soul again. And now it will not re-enter another body. It will only go back into the same body at the time of resurrection. The same body will get reborn, and it will go into that. So what's reincarnation? Well, the honest truth is that most people don't get reincarnated in the simplistic way. What does happen? The soul gives a new soul. It gives birth almost to a new soul. Oh, this is messy. Okay, so what it does do, it will add souls. Why will it add souls? Because it itself is part of one major mission. And each time it's part of a major mission, it's going to have to add souls to help it complete that major mission. So I don't want to get into the details of reincarnation. One day we'll give a proper class in reincarnation, but that's just a simplistic answer. The soul stays the same. It's like a flame. And you light a fire from it. Yeah. And it becomes a new fire. But it didn't decrease from the first one at all. So it continues the first one. It doesn't take away from the first one. And that will go on and on and on, never decreasing. So if you were to take one candle and light it every 4 meters around the world, you could all come from the original candle and still not affect the original candle, right? If you know what I'm saying. So that's the same idea. Every single soul is a continuation and born from a different soul. And that's the basic concept in Jewish Kabbalah, how we understand the concept of a soul, of reincarnation. Okay, this is a parenthetical point that I'm telling you because I want to get it out the way so that we could focus on the other part of our discussion. Okay, any other questions on something that we've discussed before I move on?
I'm just going to ask, I know you said before you enter your body as a soul, it doesn't change. So but when you've entered your body as a soul and you've gone through life experiences, doesn't that soul have some change when it moves on after?
Okay. Why is my camera shaking for you as well?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's flashing.
Give me a second.
Yep. Now we've got a white square in the middle.
You muted or what did we do?
Now you're back.
Okay, but now I'm using a different camera.
Right.
Okay, let's see if this works now. All right, so let's take it. Yochanan, your question was, doesn't the soul go through sense? So this is where I wanted to really focus on today. So it's a perfect question to put me back on track. I tend to get a little bit lost sometimes. I have a class plan, and then I allow the questions to allow me to go in a particular direction. But actually, your question was perfect because it puts us directly back on track of where I wanted to go. So what have we seen so far? What was the purpose of this little exercise that I've done with you? Because I think it's really cool to simplify everything. And I find it to be helpful. That's the one major reason. But more importantly, what I am trying to show you is something that I showed you last week, which is this. What I showed you last week was this. We have two parts to us. We are body and soul. Most people think this is I, and that if ask the average individual around the world and they say, do you have a soul? If they believe in God, they'll say probably yes. If they don't. If not, they'll say, I'm not sure, possibly. right? And from a Jewish perspective, it's not a question as if you have a soul. The question is if you have a body. Do we even grasp how fundamentally different that is? The question is not, do I have a soul? But that's who I am. What do you mean? Do I exist? Yes, that's me. The question is, do I have a body? Now, today I went on a little bit of an exercise to show you why that is, because you are ultimately a soul, but you spend time in bodies or in a body. Nobody spent time a second time in the body in the resurrection perspective. Nobody has yet gone back into their same body a second time, as far as we know. Okay, so that's the important thing. This is ultimately incorrect from a Jewish perspective. This is I. This is me. When I say your journey, I told you this is the journey of you, this is me. And what we went today is I showed you that this is you. Why? Because that doesn't change. So Yochanan's question is, so what am I doing over here? Sorry, before I get to Yochanan's question, just want to finish this point. What am I doing over here? I'm living here. For how long? For however long God puts me on this earth for. And what happens when my body, when my body dies? Nothing. I just leave the body and I continue living. I go back to being me without a body. The difference is I'll now have had life experience. Right? I'll just have had life experience. This is the difference. Okay, so what we want to understand fundamentally is who am I? Who am I? Who's the soul? And that's what we started talking about last week, and we're going to possibly get into this now. But I'm going to first just touch on Yochanan's point, and then we'll get into it. The point that I want to make with Yochanan's question is, doesn't the body change? But the soul change? And the answer is, when I said the soul doesn't change, what I was saying, it's the same soul. It's the same person throughout. Not that changes don't happen to the soul. People evolve, they change, they adapt. They go through stages of their existence. The soul that was born at the beginning of, I say the beginning of creation, but the beginning of soul births, when God decided to create your soul or my soul, yes, it's different. The changes have happened. But only, and this is where we get into the next part of our discussion, only to certain parts of our soul. Only certain parts of our soul can go through some type of change. Not all of it. Okay? So in order to understand that, we actually have to first understand more about our soul, to understand which parts of our soul never changes or can never change in essence, and which part can. Okay? So we're going to start that tonight. And we touched on it last week, but tonight we're starting to delve into it a bit deeper. So, oh, wrong one. Sorry, apologies. Okay, so you probably won't remember this one, but I spoke about last week that a soul has 5 parts to it in general. Do you recall this from last week? Okay. So I don't have space over here, but we'll call it part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we divided that this is the 3, 4, 5 is the part of the soul that you are generally in touch with, your regular consciousness, and the part you're aware. We mentioned that number 3 is your intellect. Number 4 is your emotions, and number 5 is your modes of expression. Now, what's above that? This is the part that barely changes. So number 2 barely changes. Number 1 never changes. This I refer to as your core, the essence of who you are. That cannot change. This changes but little, very rarely change. To make changes over here takes a lot of hard work or a lot of bad work, but generally if you want to make positive changes, it takes a lot of work to make, and the rest is constantly changing. Your intellect is getting upgraded. Your emotions are hopefully therefore being affected and positively changing. And most people, unfortunately, if they're not studying good things and they're not involved in healthy things, probably their emotions are, degenerating or downgrading, or getting worse in simple English. And number 5 is hopefully most people's action and thoughts and things are improving. But that's the changes, of course, are going to happen over there as well. Okay, so what I want to focus for the next 30 minutes, unless anybody has any questions, is on part number 1. Anybody has any questions? You gentlemen are being very gentle tonight. Gentlewomen and gentle ladies, way too gentle. I need a few more questions to challenge me, to argue with me, to disagree with me. Joe, you're not doing your job. I thought I paid you last week.
I'd be happy to challenge you on many things here, but we're not. It depends whether this is being presented as an absolute truth or whether it's being presented as a perspective and a belief system of one group.
Okay. The answer to your question, and I hear you. It's a similar point to what you raised last week. The answer to your question is, as I mentioned last week, and I'd like to hear further, because I believe that this is Judaism. Like, I believe that this fits with all of Judaism. And I don't believe that you will find any authentic Jewish authority that would disagree with anything I'm saying. So if there is an authentic Jewish authority in mainstream Orthodox Judaism, as it's so, it's so coined, that disagreed, I would love to hear what they think. So I'm presenting it the way Hasidus understands it, and particularly the way I understand Chabad Hasidus. But what I'm saying is, I think that all Hasidus does is it doesn't add anything new. It simply gives us the logic and the understanding behind fundamental beliefs, which are found in the Talmud, in the Midrash, and particularly in Kabbalah, and in lots of other books. But it doesn't change anything, and there's no difference of opinion. So let me just say something. I was thinking about tonight, possibly calling this, the Kabbalah of Madonna, or the foundations of Kabbalah. One day I'll do a class called the foundation, the Kabbalah of Madonna, possibly, simply so that people will come. But the idea is to tell us what's the difference between real Kabbalah as opposed to fake Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah really? Most people don't know that. And all I've told you really is that this is the way I believe Kabbalah is to be understood. And I don't know if there's any other way of understanding it to be fundamentally different. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to ask Joe to take over. But before you do, I want to say one more point. And that is this: when we talk about these things, there's two parts to Judaism. This is not where I was going to go exactly, but there's the revealed part. Sorry, my finger's not working tonight. Sorry.
Revealed. Is that revealed?
I was to say revealed, but yeah, it looks a bit messy. And there's the concealed. You know, I once heard you could Google it, it's on YouTube. I heard someone talking about this panel that they had at a big university in America. It will come to me now, but soon it will come to me. I forget the name of the university right now. But anyway, they had a massive panel, and they had the Dalai Lama. They had like one of the most well-known Muslim thinkers in America, one of the most famous Christian Catholic priests or bishops, or whatever it is. She was a bishop, and they had Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks on this panel. And I remember at some point, the Muslim fellow said something like, you know, there's beauty in what the eye can see, and things that he was talking about philosophy, and it was called the happiness panel, if you ever saw. And Jonathan Sacks, you know, interrupts him and corrected him and says, you know, there's even more beauty in that which the eye cannot see, which I found to be extremely powerful. In Jonathan Sacks, may his soul rest in peace and influence continue. He in his very elegant and deep wisdom. But anyway, Kabbalah is the focus of this part, and Hasidus. And this is where you have like the Talmud, etc. And Hasidus likes to think of ourselves as being here. Which that means is it's the connection between the two worlds. And the more Hasidus you learn, you would see that basically it tries to take the two and show them in the same light. So we try to make sense of the two and try to bring the two together. And that's the role of Hasidus. So it's nothing new. It's just making sense of that which is not understood. So the Talmud is understood on what to do or what the story is, etc. The Kabbalah is understood in what the soul is, but it's not purely understood in physical terms. And we in Hasidus like to give the physical words to understand that which cannot be said, so to speak. To understand the deeper concepts of the concealed, but within the terminology of the revealed. So we're not Kabbalah. What I'm talking about, we as in Hasidus, is not Kabbalah. We're not Nigla. We're both, but neither. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I want to, even though I said I was going to focus on point number one of the soul. I actually didn't think I was even going to get this far because I thought we'd have more questions. So that's fine if I spend a moment to elaborate on Joe, because I've achieved more than I wanted to so far, and I feel like this is an important point. So Joe, my question to you is, it's back at you, and I hope you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you have any? Do you think that there's anybody that has a different approach to what I'm saying from the mainstream Jewish world?
I'm sure there is, but they may not be mainstream in the way that Chabad has the major presence and influence across Judaism currently. So if we talk about raw numbers, then Chabad would be the dominant philosophy, without a doubt, worldwide. But there's
First
certainly...
of all, I'm very happy you said that, because 70 years ago, the Rebbe was a very small fringe group in New York with about 300 people sitting around him. And to say that today, where there was other Rebbes that sat with tens of thousands of people, to say that today Chabad is a dominant force, that's quite incredible. And I think you're right. But, okay, go on.
Well, Judaism being a democracy, we always have room for other viewpoints, which haven't completely disappeared.
So could you just give me an example so that I understand what you think? Do you have an example of, or what type of group you would be?
Say the conservative Masorti movement, the liberal movement, progressive. So there's other elements of Judaism. Within the Sephardi movements, there's several subdivisions. I have seen a kind of a family tree of Jewish groupings around the world and their relationship to each other. And there was something like 100 divisions on that tree, 100 points of view, if you like, Chabad being one of them, obviously a big part of it, but one of, say, a rainbow of 100. So I know there's many different perspectives, and some of those groups will not necessarily follow Kabbalah the way it is, the interpretation of Kabbalah the way it is. What would be fascinating for me personally is, say, the Rambam's perspective on all of this, because the Moshe ben Maimon was, a great rabbi, great scientist, a great philosopher, a thinker. And he, in his own incredible mind, he was trying to reconcile all these different viewpoints. So talking about the soul, he would look at the hidden teachings, the revealed teaching, but his physician's mind would also ponder the physical nature of what the vessel that holds the soul, and how we reconciled all that. That'd be a fascinating discussion in itself.
It certainly would. Okay. I want to respond to what you have to say, because I think it's an important point. And that is this. If you want to talk about other groups within the Sephardic community, or the Litvak/Yeshivas, Misnagdish, whatever the people want to call them, or in like the Satmar community, etc., etc., if they want to talk about this stuff and they have a different way of understanding the same text, I'd love to see it. And I'd love to understand what they see differently. I have not yet clearly understand it. And if I have seen someone understood, if I were to show them the way we understood it, I would just I believe that in most cases they would understand that simply they didn't understand it correctly. I may be wrong, and I might be overly zealous and egotistic in my statement, but I do believe that if you were to look at the words, this all. The thing about Chabad Hasidus in the beginning of Tanya, which is the primary work of Chabad Hasidus, right? The Alter Rebbe says that this book is Mulukut Mipi Sfarim or Pi Sofrim, which means that it's all based on pre-written works. And all I'm coming is to bring the collaboration between them and to bring clarity to them, not to add or change anything. And to this day, there's no. When we talk about the world of Kabbalah, we talk about the world of Hasidus, there's no differences of opinion in the philosophy. As far as that's what we talk about. We talk about the world of Nistar, of concealed Kabbalah, as being one way of understanding it. In other words, there's one path, there's one truth. In other words, there's only one truth in Kabbalah. What does happen is people could misunderstand things and then interpret things incorrectly. However, when you go to the Talmud, it's a fact that we say that there is difference of opinion, and both opinions which are different are both correct. And that was our previous course. We discussed that in our Decoding Judaism course. And we were focusing over there, not on the Hasidic perspective, on the fundamental revealed part of the Torah and how we understood that. And in that part of the Torah, the Talmud, there is fundamentally disagreement in how we interpret. And not only that, both opinions could be 100% correct. Nevertheless, we have a process of how we come to conclusion or consensus. But in Kabbalah, there's no such thing. We don't have majority rules when it comes to Kabbalah, when it comes to this concealed part of the Torah. There is one truth, and that's it. There is sometimes a lack of understanding. Okay, so that's just one point. If you're talking about a liberal / progressive / reform / conservative approach to Judaism, anybody can stand up, and this is in no way trying to bash anybody, but anybody could stand up one day and say, listen, I want to interpret things in my particular way, and everyone has the right to interpret things however they want. I'm not going to stop them, but that's not been accepted throughout the last 2,000 years as mainstream Judaism. Today, Chabad philosophy is considered by, I would say, the very vast majority as mainstream Judaism, majority of people that believe the Torah is fundamentally true. So what I'm saying is, if you don't believe the Torah is true, and therefore you think that there's elements of truth in it, or there's parts of truth in it, and there's parts of it which are just up for interpretation, or just ideas, but not essential truths, then I can't argue with you in the sense you're coming from a totally different perspective. But within the perspective of the Orthodox world, now when I talk about the Orthodox, I mean within the perspective of the people that believe that the Torah, all of the Torah is fundamentally true, I don't think you'll have differences.
Can I suggest, Rabbi, and we may have diverted a little bit from what the other people would like to hear in this. I'll come back to one point. So Rabbi Ishmael, I think, established the principles by which we derive the conclusions from the
He
Torah.
didn't establish them. He just
He encoded them. Sorry, encoded. He didn't establish, but he recorded them so that other people could see what the rules are for exegesis, I think it's called. Yeah, how to derive things.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's no equivalent to Rabbi Ishmael for Kabbalah.
Okay, I don't know what you mean by an equivalent to Rabbi Ishmael for Kabbalah. There's 2 points. Number one, Rabbi Ishmael only encoded or enumerated 13 of them. There's actually a proper enumeration of 32 of them.
Yeah.
And not only that, there's some major ones that Rabbi Ishmael left out, which is a whole question why he did, but a discussion for another time. But he wouldn't have disagreed with them because we know that he himself had used some of the other ones as well. But when you say about codes, Kabbalah is not something derived. We don't derive Kabbalah. We don't derive Kabbalah. Kabbalah, okay. It's a great question that you've asked because it leads me to allow you to explain another fundamental concept. Your questions have, I know you think that we perhaps got a bit derailed. We haven't, because you've allowed me to clarify certain points of Kabbalah. First of all, I've clarified to you that in Kabbalah we don't have disagreement, and Kabbalah is one point. And because we don't have disagreement, we don't have laws of derivation. We don't have ways to derive Kabbalah. The very definition of Kabbalah, by the way, if I were to go back to my slide and show you the two parts of the Torah, the revealed part and the concealed part. Did I have such a slide? I did, but I can't see it. Anyway, if I were to show you, oh, okay, never mind. Sorry. If I were to show you that thing that I showed you revealed and concealed, just making it for short, and I spoke to you, these are the two parts of the Torah, right, that I showed you before, and where Hasidus falls in. We have the revealed part, the concealed part. This is then over here. We also have something known as Kabbalah, and I explained that in the previous course. And over here we have something called Kabbalah. As a matter of fact, this is almost all Kabbalah. Did you know that there's also Kabbalah over here? This Kabbalah also has no disagreement. What does Kabbalah mean? Kabbalah means received. In both places it's received. Over here, this Kabbalah is the received basic interpretation of the Torah as Moses received it from God. There's no debate in that part of the Torah, in the revealed over here. No debate. There's only a debate in the derived and parts that are not mentioned over there in the derivation. Over here, there's no debate in the received. This is also spiritually, divinely given. From teacher to student. Who was the original person that got inspired by this Kabbalah? So there's different opinions of where Kabbalah actually come from. Where was it originally received from? So some people will say, or we know, not some people say, some places we know that it's recorded as having come from Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai as well, and he told us a bit about the soul. We also know there's a book known that predates the Zohar, known as the Book of Formation, the Book of Sefer Yetzirah, which is a Kabbalistic work about how things came about, and that's attributed to three individuals: to Adam Harishon, Adam. It's attributed to Abraham, and it's attributed to Rabbi Akiva. Right, Rabbi Akiva, who's the teacher of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Kabbalah. right? Author of the Zohar. How could it be attributed to all these people? And we understand that basically these people were all divinely inspired. In other words, all have had a way of receiving spiritual information from God. Both Adam and Abraham and Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Akiva all received these elements from God, and they all gave that over to their students. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also did. The difference is that this Kabbalah, the first, when we talk about the revealed over here, that part is what Moses received on Mount Sinai, and that's it. Nobody else receives anything after that. Nobody else could add an interpretation. Say, when it says, God could appear to him in a dream and say, well, it means that you should put blue boxes on your forehead. No one can say that. Once God, Moses receives, different. However, this Kabbalah, the Kabbalah over here, the concealed element of Kabbalah, there you can have people having new inspiration, because it doesn't affect the way we behave. It only affects the way we understand. Do you understand the difference? And therefore, over here, there's no need to start deriving new laws. Over here, you have the requirement. Over here, you need to derive. You need to derive. Over here, there's no need. You only have to understand. And how do you understand? By studying and by delving into it. You don't derive new things. You just establish it and build your understanding. And you also have people that are divinely inspired. We believe that the Baal Shem Tov, the Arizal, was divinely inspired. We know that they were taught by people that had even passed on, both the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov. And we know that they passed those teachings over to their students. Is that clear?
Yeah, but you're right. I agree with what you said, that on the right side of that diagram, the nistar, the hidden, is there's a need to accept that that Kabbalah is as is, all the way through. And when we're talking about the soul, what we've discussed till now, that discussion of the anatomy of the soul, the journey of the soul, the origin of most of that information, does that come from the revealed or the hidden Kabbalah?
Mainly from the hidden Kabbalah, but elements from the concealed. Okay, so parts of it will come from, in other words, what I'm saying is like this: the fundamentals of what we understand of that concealed part of the Torah is from from the concealed part of Kabbalah, is from that spiritually inclined thing that wasn't given. It wasn't given en masse on Mount Sinai to thousands of people. Understand what I'm saying? It's given privately, individually to unique individuals, right? Like the Zohar and things like that. And that's why not everybody necessarily believes that it's so fundamental to study, whatever, a discussion for another time. And it wasn't so fundamental to study till previous generations, till the recent, I should say, till more recent generations. And most people didn't study till the birth of Hasidus. Most people didn't study, or till the Arizal, I should say. Most people barely study this stuff. But as the world has changed and evolved, there became a requirement and a need to have a deeper understanding within Judaism. And therefore, today we believe that it is fundamental that all people understand these parts of Judaism. However, in answer to your question, yes, parts of it come from the revealed part of Torah, which was quoted from Moshe. Because if you look, for example, in the Tanya, or if you look in Kabbalah, you will often see they almost always quote Psukim or Talmud or Gemara. And they just put the pieces together and they show you the broader picture of how everything fits together. And through that, they're able to explain things in that way. In other words, they just, when you look at it through the Talmud and you just see that particular line, you would think, oh, it doesn't have great significance. But when you see the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, where he takes a piece of Talmud and then brings 5 different verses from the Torah, and he says, well, how does all this, which seems to contradict each other, etc., fit? That's when you start to see, hold on a second, there's a much bigger picture. Step back a bit, and let's make sense of that. We'll have to bring something from Kabbalah to understand what it says in the 5 books of Moses. And that's where you see the collaboration between, that's where Hasidus comes in. By the way, Zohar also quotes the Torah. Zohar also quotes the Chumash. As a matter of fact, we have Zohar on each portion of the Torah, which takes that portion of the Torah and explains it from the Kabbalistic perspective. And of course, all the Hasidic masters, they all base their teachings based on the verses of the Torah. Okay, so the answer is that it comes from both. The difference is that one is divinely inspired, and also it focuses on the world. It doesn't focus on the do's and don'ts of Torah, but focuses on the spirituality behind the do's and don'ts of Torah. It's about what it's focusing on. And that's how it comes to a different understanding, not a contradicting. It never contradicts, or very rarely contradicts, I should say. It very rarely contradicts, but it's because it comes from a different perspective. It has a different goal at this point. The ultimate goal is always the same, but initially the goal is slightly different. Is that clear what I've told you today?
It is clear, and I assume that again, the scientific perspective is normally to test and verify, but with Kabbalah, that's not an option. There's no test and verify. There's no experiment that would indicate if Kabbalah is correct or not. It's a matter of emunah, of faith.
So the answer to that is there's 2 points. One part of that answer is 100% yes. You're correct. Fundamentally, science can't touch Kabbalah. Science is about the observable, and Kabbalah is about the non-observable to the physical eye. So it's non-observable information. So yes, there's no way of scientifically proving it. However, we would like to say, and this is debatable. This is debatable. The second point. That it's not pure faith, in a sense that there is, if you have the broad shoulders enough to I would like to say, to truly grasp the depth of Kabbalah, you're not going to be taking it only on faith value, and that's where also Hasidus comes in. Chabad Hasidus is making it, it's all about making it logical and understood. And therefore parts of it will ultimately, yes, tie back into faith. And ultimately all does. But there's a logic and a science to the Kabbalah. Chabad ultimately is the science of Kabbalah. Not the science as in the evidence of Kabbalah. Not the scientific evidence, but the evidence within your reality to Kabbalah. So Kabbalah talks about spiritual ideas, and Chabad ties and takes those ideas and brings it back into your life and shows you those ideas within your life. Do you understand? And that's a fundamental difference.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Chabad is the science of Kabbalah. But once again, beyond that still remains elements of what ultimately boils down to accepting at first something on a level of faith, pure faith. Okay, we've gone over time, but I hope the most part of my discussion I had finished even before, and that's why I've encouraged this conversation. Therefore, if anybody wants to ask any other questions, I'm more than happy, because I'm finding this particular discussion to be very fundamental in understanding Hasidus and Kabbalah. So if anybody has any further questions, please feel free to ask. And thank you everybody for joining.
I wanted to ask you, going back a lot earlier, when we're talking about the soul, you said the soul never changes. Yet, if the soul never changes, are we saying that as a person lives through their life, there's no, the soul is then trying to converse with the body to make it understand the soul, but if the body or the mind of the body comprehends something, and then you know, some people, it's like getting a job, learning a trade, or learning a profession. So the body ends up through the mind learning a lot. Now, is that the soul that is generating all that activity, or is that or the soul helping the body and the brain to generate the learning aspect, or is that something different that the body and the mind learns and improves or changes and or improves itself, but the soul, if the soul is the basic institution or brain of the individual, and that never changes. I got a bit
Yeah.
confused.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I hear what you're saying. You're struggling to say your question because you're struggling to understand what I'm saying. So it's a
Yeah.
struggle. So I fully understand what you're saying. And by the way, your question it was somewhat touched on by Yochanan, but not fully. So I'll just clarify. So I appreciate your question and thank you for that question. And I want to clarify that. It's a very important point. I obviously never made it clear. So let me explain to you. Your mind, as we understand it, is your soul. It houses in a brain.
Yep.
And it's limited by your brain. And if your brain stops functioning, the soul that's living over there won't be able to function properly either.
Right.
But that is you. So what I was saying is you do change. Your mind changes and your soul changes. Do you change? Yes. Does your mind change? Yes. And that's why I drew the 5 parts, and I revisit the 5 parts of your soul to explain to you that, yes, most of you changes. Your intellect changes, your emotion change, and your actions and the way you express yourself change. The way you feel changes. What you understand changes. Your goals can change. What doesn't change as much is your deep pleasures and desires. That was point number 2 of your soul, known as Chaya. That does change, but not as much. And then your core does not change. Now, Leon, tell me if this is clear, okay? Because I really want this point to be clear. It's really important, your question. When I said you don't change, I meant 2 things don't change. The actual soul is the same soul in all 4 stages. Remember that original
Yes.
thing?
I remember you saying that.
So that's the same soul in all 4 stages.
Right.
That's point number 1. That doesn't change,
Right.
right?
Okay.
It's the same soul always. This soul is the same soul as this soul and as this soul and as that soul. It's the same entity, same person. In other words, at some point, you'll be able to have memories of all these. Now, God creates that when you enter your body, you forget about what happened over here. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there you go. Over here, you're made to forget part number 1. But once you reach over here, you see yourself as a continuation. It's one continuation. It doesn't end. But you've just evolved. You've grown. You've amended. Here you have a perfect soul. Over here, it's a perfect soul. Over here, you go into a corrupt world or a difficult world, a challenging world, and you challenge your soul. And what this does to your perfect little being is it makes it bring out strong potential. And that's why you come into that body. And when you come out, you now have to recalibrate, or is, I don't know, you understand what I'm trying to say. Is the right word. Anyway, you have to reacclimatize, so to speak, to the spirituality of things after having been, and that's why we go through those processes once we leave our bodies. But it's the same person, but they've changed. They've learned about challenge. They've learned about tests. They've learned about physicality. They've learned about family, things that they didn't know over here in the first stage. So yes, they've changed, but what they say is the core doesn't change. The essence of who you are, and the essence of who you are, and I've got to do one more final slide. I don't know if it'll be the final slide, depends what questions you guys ask. How did that happen? The essence of who you are is this. Everything was part of one box. Not a box, but everything was just before God created it all, was just God. And then God creates souls. Okay. That is your essence and your core. That always goes back to God. That cannot change. That part of you, the fact that you are one with God, that you're a part of God. And even when you come outside of God, so to speak, you become outside of God as in you become your own independent entity. You still, the core of you can never change. So you can go into a body, right? And there's parts of the soul which gets enclosed in that body that will be affected by the body. Your intellect, your emotions and things, but your core is still here. Your core can never change. And that's what I said, that can never change. Okay? And this is the point that I was going to get to that I didn't get to, which was the first part of who you are. I'm really simplifying everything. There's so much more to talk about all this, but I'm hoping that gives you a bit of clarity.
Rabbi, could I suggest, and thank you, Leon, that was very interesting. It's we often rely on processes we're familiar with in daily life to then try to understand concepts like that. So like as parents, we have children. The children initially are part of us and then they become independent. That's how we sort of understand that there can be an independent new human being that's distinct from us. But when you drill down, the DNA, a lot of the behavioral stuff, the principles, the values, where do they come from? There's always a part of us as a parent inside the mind of the child. In fact, that probably causes a lot of the rebellion. They try to avoid that, to maintain that distinction, right? So looking at the soul as coming from, not just coming from God, but being a part of God, that the essence of the soul is godly in its origin. So it's we talk about a tiny bit of God becoming part of us on loan anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tricky model to try to get our heads around, because when we talk about parents and children, you can see the two distinct entities. You know, at some point as parents, we begrudgingly accept that the children, especially once they become adults, you accept that, hey, that's a separate person. As much as I like to think they came from me and they share DNA and they share values and principles and so on, but at some point you stand back and say, that's someone else right there, and my level of control over that is limited. So does that way of thinking apply to the soul? It comes from God, but it comes into our body, and at some point, the level of control is limited. And is that the origin of free will?
Okay, fascinating question. Okay, so there's 2 points over here. You just did a little bit of Chabad, okay, just to let you know. What did you do? You took what I said and you gave a physical example of that. Are you sure how I explained to you how you come from? I'm just getting back at you over here, a bit of sweet revenge, but not in a bad way, in a good way, to show you how you ultimately agree with me. But you know, what did I do? I showed you a model, which is a Kabbalistic model of how we all come from the source, where we come from in God. And then what did you do? You gave me a physical example. That's exactly what Chassidus does. And not only that, Chassidus is the one that gave us that example that you gave in the 2nd chapter of Tanya. The example that the Torah, that the Alter Rebbe gives in order to prove the concept of the soul coming from God is the concept of the fact that the Torah says about the Jewish people, B'nai B'char Yisrael, you are my child. You are the children of God. And therefore he brings proof from the Torah for that concept, which we understood a Kabbalistic concept. So you were brilliant, but it's not your idea. You were able to gain it from my idea because I had an understanding of that idea. And therefore my understanding, I was able to explain it to you. And therefore you were able to also give the knowledge that we have that Chassidus explains, which I just thought was really cool. Okay, hopefully I didn't lose you while I was getting that thing. But to your point, at the same time over there in Tanya, he says the exact point that you're saying, which is, yes, we are like the children of God because the Torah calls us the children of God. And because just like a child comes from the essence of the parent, and he goes into the details over there, describing what it means to come from the essence of the parent, right? That you come from the essential core of the DNA of the parent. And if you're to trace back the DNA of the child, you would see the parents over there. You would find the parents over there. But the difference is the child can cut themselves off, in theory, from the parents. In theory, if a child wanted to, that would be it's almost self-destruction to cut a parent or a child off the parent, but sometimes it could be the only survival. Anyway, but the difference is with God, we can only feel separated. We can't be truly separated. So it's ultimately an analogy that we can understand and we can comprehend. When the Torah says we're the children of God, it's the closest thing to understanding where one essence comes from another essence. You have no deep analogy within the physical world. And that's why it calls us the children of God. But the truth is it's far greater because it's one thing. It's not that we come from God, we are. Our soul is a part of God. It doesn't become a separate entity independent of God, like a child does. It comes from the parent, but then becomes their own independent entity. It comes from God and remains part of God, yet being independent. Is there any description of such a thing in the physical world? I don't think so. And that's why we don't give more clarity on that. But we use the best words, and that's where Chabad Hasidus comes in. It takes those concepts and gives us the best physical worlds that we could, that's why we call it the science of Hasidus. We say this comment, you come from God, great, what does that mean? What it does is it will give you the analogies within the physical world in order to understand it. Is that clear? So here we have,
it is. It's. I'm thinking the physical world. There's the phenomenon of quantum entanglement that some people here may have heard. Where, and it's a current debate where if quantums are entangled, are they separate or are they together and indivisible? And that's exactly the same quandary. But that's again that's for another time. It doesn't. It supports what you're saying. It's the closest science match to that concept.
Right. Let me just ask Yochanan, I think you look like you wanted to say something before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when we were earlier in that discussion, you were talking about the soul and the first 1 and 2, which doesn't change, that's the way it stays. But I presume I'm taking it for granted that that's a very positive, that you don't want to change it, that's a creative, godly part of your soul, the 1 and 2. Or could that also mean that you get evil people? Needs to say lots of evil people in the world. Are they born and they can't change because the 1 and 2 they're born with, they can't change it?
Okay, so this is where the fundamental difference comes in. And this is when we talk about the secret to Chabad. You know, what's the secret to Chabad? The secret to Chabad is we understand this concept that ultimately, essentially, all of us are brothers. I mean, we're not only brothers, when the Alter Rebbe says we're literally from the same place, we're from the same core. And therefore, that's the secret to Chabad. The secret to Chabad is we have that understanding. And that impacts the way we behave in the sense that we understand that even though somebody on the outside looks like a bad person, and they could do really bad and mean things to people, but we believe that deep down there's a true goodness over there. And only thing that's being played or that's affected is the external elements of that person. Their intellect could be in the wrong place, their emotions and the way they express themselves. But we do believe that if you would start to educate that person, start to change the way they think, the way they understand, we believe that you would start to change the way they behave as well. So in other words, what we're saying is that some people have had bad education or have had bad experiences, which cause them to behave badly. But that doesn't mean that they are bad. So that's the important difference. People behave badly because of what they've been experienced or what they've learned or what they've felt, but not because they're bad by the core. We don't believe that anybody is bad in the core. Okay, and that's the fundamental difference, because we don't look at people by their exposure only. Yes, the way they express themselves is important, and we have to protect ourselves from dangerous people 100% and not do that. But that doesn't mean that that's not the core of the person. And if you were to give any individual enough love and enough devotion and enough education, anybody could be changed. And that's a fundamental belief in Judaism. Okay.
What about that serial killer up in the Danglo forest?
What about him?
Well, how could one even consider that he could have been a good person, although he obviously had mental issues, so he was deranged.
Well,
And-
you answered your question.
Sorry?
You answered the question for yourself. As you spoke, you answered the question.
Okay.
How did you
So-
answer the question? What did I mean? What did I mean? Leon, please explain to me. What did I just mean when I said that?
Well, because well, when I said he was deranged, I answered the question. Is that what you're
Deranged. You
saying?
said he wasn't himself.
He wasn't. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve punishment. It doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to be, put in prison and suffer the consequences.
Of course, I
People
agree
are
with you.
still responsible for their actions.
Yeah.
The people still make bad choices. They're responsible for it. But people are not from a Chabad Hasidism, and we believe this to be fundamentally Jewish, because this is what we're not making this stuff up. This is Judaism, that people in their core are really good. Something can happen to them that can cause them to behave bad, or they can be badly treated or something like that. But deep down, there's a famous little story that Stalin's second in command, his name slips me right now, and I'll conclude with this last point. I'm getting a bit tired, but what's his name? Kaganovich, I think his name was Kaganovich, something like that. He was a brutal man, but he was Jewish, and he was Stalin's right-hand man. And we know that Stalin was responsible for the death of millions, possibly
Yep.
more than Hitler. And he had his right-hand man, but we know that Stalin, towards the end of his life, mistrusted everybody, especially Jewish people. He hated Jewish people to the core, and he even tried to get his own right-hand man, Kaganovich, because he was Jewish, in trouble. He tried to arrange for him to board a plane that was supposed to go under, and he told the pilot to fly the plane to Israel, so that he would say, "Oh, look, he's really going back to be with his brothers and whatever. He's really just a bad, stinking Jew," even though he had done all the dirty jobs for Stalin. Anyway, a Jew once came to the Rebbe, and this was after the passing of Stalin, and Kaganovich was no longer in any place of power. And he mentioned to the Rebbe that, by the way, I was there and I met the wicked Kaganovich while I was in the Soviet Union. And the Rebbe became serious, and he said, "It is a Rasha. He's a bad person. He's done bad things. Aber ken tshuvaton, dav tshuvaton. He has to do tshuva." Now, to think of a person that is as evil as Kaganovich, does that mean that the Rebbe was saying that the person should not be held accountable for his actions? he shouldn't be punished, or he shouldn't even receive a death penalty for all those people that he's thousands or possibly millions of people's deaths that he was responsible for, or he was, he assisted in. It's not what he's saying. He's saying that no, he was in that position for whatever reason, but deep down, he still has the potential to change. And yes, we do. People are in, and that's our job in Hasidus and in Torah in general, but in Hasidus in particular, to reveal that to people. This is the underlying point of Hasidus, to allow people to acknowledge their true inner self and not to define themselves based on the external feelings and bodily reactions and modes of expression, but to define themselves based on the way they are in their core and their pure essential being. And when we define ourselves that way, we also can see other people in that light, and that's how we can truly connect to people. That's how we can truly become one with people. Knowing that we start to live that way, we can start to believe that we can also live a higher life. We could also live a better life. And so a better life, I don't mean with more Lamborghinis. I mean better life as better people on a higher plane, a more spiritual plane, because I acknowledge that I'm much higher than the way I think, or what occupies the majority of my thoughts or my space. And when we do that for ourselves, we can do that for others. And that's the goal of Hasidus, to live with your core. In other words, to live true to who you really are, and not to believe in the falseness of your externalities, because that's not who you are. That's in one line, the sentence, the core of Hasidus. And that's what I've been trying to show you all tonight and any other time that I've spoken to you about anything or everything. It all gets back to that one underlying point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Very,
for your patience.
very,
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome, and hopefully we'll continue. Tomorrow night is Lag BaOmer, and I thought it apropos that we should be talking about some of the fundamental cores of what Kabbalah is, as preparation for the night of Kabbalah, the night that we celebrate the deeper, essential parts of Judaism and what it really is about. So I want to wish you all a happy Lag BaOmer, and live with your true inner being. And if you're in Melbourne, you can join us tomorrow night. And if you're not, please God, Mashiach, come and we'll all be together in Jerusalem.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, guys.
Good night. Thanks
And
very
women.
much.
Irene's told that anybody else. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good
Okay.
night.
Thank you.
night.
Thank you. Laila.
Bye.
Mazel tov.